Wait, what the hell just happened? During what was supposed to be a predictably weird speech last night, a visibly confused Donald Trump apparently forgot that he was president, what month it was, and creepily referred to himself as the fertilization president later on. Super weird, super creepy, and this guy is running the country. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we are starting to see the 78, 79-year-old Donald Trump continue to unravel in terms of his cognitive ability, starting with this clip here in which he, even though he's been president for more than 2 months, seems to be regurgitating a campaign promise from last year when he was running against Vice President Kamala Harris.
But on day one, we're ending the inflation nightmare that Joe Biden created and caused, but just by his spending. Two things: his spending, but I think more important, he destroyed our energy policy, and energy started going up. Gasoline, any form of energy went through the roof.
So again, this is where I say he's visibly confused. So it's not day one of your presidency. It's day like, I don't know, 60 plus, right? You were inaugurated on January 20th at 12 p.m. noon. You've been president for 2 months. What do you mean day one you're going to end Joe Biden's policy? We're past day one. So why didn't you end it? Why are you saying you're going to end it now as if it was 6 months ago, 8 months ago? What the hell are you doing? He seemed to almost recognize it, like, oh my God, what am I talking about? Deferred default, do the weave, energy policy. Well, President Biden's energy policy was actually better than Trump. Domestic energy production in this country was higher than it ever was under the Trump administration. Donald Trump inherited a pretty good situation with respect to domestic energy production, and yet gas prices, rose when Donald Trump took office. Again, like, just totally incoherent, lost track of time, apparently confused about where he is and who's president. And unfortunately, that's not the only weird and dishonest and creepy part of this conversation. We'll continue.
Like this. But we also, by the way, we lowered energy costs really, like, tremendously. Energy's way down. Cost of gasoline's way down. The cost of groceries, a word that I used a lot on the campaign. It's like an old-fashioned word, but it's a beautiful word, very descriptive word. And the groceries are coming down, Brooke, at a level that we're finally getting costs under control in our country. And
you didn't invent the word groceries. You didn't resurrect the word groceries. Everybody uses the word groceries like it's a common phrase. It's probably one of the most common words used in America because most people actually have to buy their own groceries, and they've been struggling to do so under your economy, even though you inherited a really good economy from President Biden. Gas and grocery prices skyrocketed on your watch. And again, just the incoherence of it all, where he stumbles and he tries to catch himself. He's stumbling over his words. He's stammering. Really strange stuff coming from the commander-in-chief. Here's another clip.
In election, we did fantastically well with women. I kept hearing, women don't like him. I said, I think they do. Don't like, fake polls don't like me. That's who don't like me. But we were setting records in so many of these cases, and I was for women. I was for the women, the suburban housewife, where I stopped low-income housing projects from being built at a house next to you, where people were being desperate.
So the reason that people say you're bad, that women don't like you, they're just quoting your wife, right? Obviously, your wife, a woman, doesn't particularly like you. That's one. But yeah, the polling is pretty clear on this. Donald Trump is not particularly popular with women overall. There is a gender gap between him, and was a gender gap between him and Vice President Kamala Harris, and even between Donald Trump and President Biden. This idea that Donald Trump is relatively popular with women is just simply not true. I will also point out that when it comes to his relationships with women, not only does he have a frosty one with his wife, not only did he cheat on her with a porn star while she was tending to their newly born son, Barron, he was also found liable for sexual abuse and defamation of E. Jean Carroll after he forcibly penetrated her in a Bergdorf Goodman clothing store back in the early 90s. He's been credibly accused of sexual assault or rape by, I think, dozens of women at this point. So I'm not exactly sure what the hell he's talking about. Plus, we have the Access Hollywood tape where he brags about sexually assaulting women. So again, I'm not entirely sure what he's talking about with respect to his credibility with women, but again, he seems to be visibly addled. Here's another clip.
Mental institutions and insane asylum, same thing. Insane asylum is mental institution on steroids, right? I used to say Dr. Hannibal Lecter, the great Dr. Hannibal Lecter, is in a hotel room near you. And the fake news back there, a lot of fake news here, by the way. fake news would say, why does he keep mentioning Hannibal Lecter? I said, you know why? Because we just won an election. We got a lot of votes because of Hannibal Lecter. We don't want to have Hannibal Lecter in our country.
Right, so people were making fun of you for the Hannibal Lecter references for a couple of reasons. Number one, Silence of the Lambs came out damn near 35 years ago. Great film, number one, but it's not exactly like a really relevant modern pop culture reference, number one. Number two, you weren't suggesting that immigrants were Hannibal Lecter. You were just like randomly citing him for no damn reason. And so again, it was just a bit of a non sequitur that people were calling you out on. Now you're desperate to try to, well, it's part of the weave. It was all part of my 4D chess. What I was suggesting was that, undocumented migrants were acting like Hannibal Lecter because they're seeking asylum. Asylum is also a phrase which means, a mental institution, right? It's like, it can mean two different things. And so like, then I'm drawing the connection to Hannibal Lecter, right? Again, just goes to show his very spastic thought process as his, brain falls out in front of us. Here's another clip.
Destroy our country. And a woman, by the way, the head of Homeland, Christie is doing a great job. Kristi Noem. She's doing a great job. She's getting them out. And Tom Homan.
So Kristi Noem, the former governor, I believe, of South Dakota, and now the secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, is not doing a good job. She's LARPing, live-action role-playing, going from one location to the next, dressing up in a uniform. Sometimes she's dressed up like, she's on a SWAT raid. Other times she's in, like, military fatigues. Other times she's like Darth Vader. Right? I mean, she's at a cosplay convention, it seems like, every damn day. She's presiding over a multi-million-dollar propaganda blitz funded by taxpayers. I don't know if you know this, but our taxpayer money, yours and mine, are going to a DHS campaign blitz, a commercial blitz, an advertising blitz featuring Kristi Noem, in which she is just profusely thanking Donald Trump. It's like state propaganda that you would see out of the Soviet Union, and your taxpayer dollars and my taxpayer dollars are funding it. Really gross, creepy shit. Maybe Doge should be cutting that sort of waste, fraud, and abuse. Maybe you should be looking into that, because certainly if that happened under the Biden administration, these same people who are cheering Trump on would be apoplectic. How dare you spend taxpayer dollars, on a marketing blitz, on state-run propaganda? And they'd be right to do so. But when the shoe's on the other foot and it's their cult leader, it's permissible. Here is another clip.
Democrat, but I know one thing, that I believe the Democrats are going to be forced to help vote for this bill. And then we have the very important continuation of debt. I don't call it a debt increase, because we're not looking to increase. We want to just continue that line, and we should call it, I think, from now on, Mike, we're going to call it the continuation, because that's what it is. That was thrown into our lap unnecessarily, but we have it, and it's fine that we...
So I want to remind you that Donald Trump added more to the national debt during his first term than any president in modern American history, really any president in history at all, including President Biden. $8 trillion to the national debt that Trump approved. Okay, and he campaigned on not only not adding to the national debt, he swore during his first term that he'd wipe out all the debt he'd inherited from Presidents Obama all the way back to President Washington. Actually, I think the national debt as we know it really began under President Reagan. But the bottom line is Trump said he would not add a penny to it and would wipe it all out. He lied. He added many pennies. He added more pennies than any other president. And he was fiscally profligate, fiscally irresponsible by conservatives' own standards. They don't give a damn, because unfortunately most of the MAGA Republican Party aren't actually interested in consistent principles of fiscal responsibility. They just want to own the libs, and that's what Donald Trump tries to do. So again, this idea that President Biden was fiscally irresponsible or profligate, certainly not compared to Trump. And there were multiple debt ceiling increases and suspensions under the Trump administration that Republicans approved because they didn't want to trigger a national or global economic catastrophe. Meanwhile, when President Biden needed a debt ceiling increase to pay the bills accrued under the Trump administration when they came due, the Republicans in Congress, led by Kevin McCarthy, attempted to extort President Biden, as they always do when debt ceiling crises occur under Democratic presidents, right? This idea like, oh my God, we got to raise the debt. Republicans love to exploit that. They demand that Democrats give them clean debt ceiling increases when they're in power, but they never reciprocate, which is why Democrats shouldn't do it here. Democrats should do what Republicans would do under similar situation and force Republicans to bend the knee and give concessions in exchange for a debt ceiling increase. Trump knows that there's the risk that Democrats might do that, although with Chuck Schumer's feckless leadership, perhaps not. So that's why he's complaining about this and trying to get ahead of it. One more clip. I think this is the really creepy one, if I remember correctly, from Donald Trump, in which he refers to himself as the fertilization president.
You're doing great on it, and we're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women too. The women, between the fertilization and all of the other things that we're talking about, it's going to be great. We're joined today, fertilization. I'm still very proud of it. I don't care. I'll be known as the fertilization president. That's okay. That's not bad. That's not bad. I've been called much worse.
By people who know you, to be sure. He's certainly the fertilizer president, and that he's full of shit, but the fertilization president, that's not a mental image that I or most others appreciate. But yeah, there you go. Donald Trump visibly confused, thinking he's back on the campaign trail 6 or 8 months ago, when in fact he is the sitting president, and he has had more than one day to end inflation, and he has failed to do so. He's actively contributed to it, again, as well as referring to himself as the fertilization president. This is really weird shit, this idea that he resurrected the word nobody was using the word groceries. What do they call those stores with the G word? Prior to me resurrecting the word groceries, it was just the store. You know what I'm saying? The store. Now it's the grocery store. Really ridiculous stuff from a ridiculous man. And again, we're only 2 months in. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.